There we go. So, welcome to the Saturday morning call. Here is 9 a.m. in Thailand, and that's Friday evening, U.S. time. Uh, Ivan is in Malaysia. What time is it right now, Ivan?
It's 10 a.m.
What?
10 a.m. It's 10 in the morning.
10. Okay.
Yeah, 10. Yeah.
All right. So, you had asked a question about does the Buddha teach mundane Dhamma? The answer to that is yes, and sometimes he said the answer to it is yes, and that's where it is. The other way of saying it is that it depends upon the student as to what he's expecting from the student. For instance, in Sutta number 20, he talks to a group of, I think it's 20, no, it's 21. He's talking to a group of bhikkhus, and he's using Brahmin literature as a foundation. And then at the end of the sutras, he says, therefore, O monks, do not become reborn. So he's playing on the fact that they believe in reincarnation, rebirth, but that he's advising them not to. There's also a whole section of 10 suttas in the Majjhima Nikaya where it's referred to the kings, and that's where we have suttas with Bimbisara and King Pasenadi, and both of those kings were noble, so he was giving noble instructions to them. But there is one sutta in the Digha Nikaya, I think it's number 2, and I forget the name of the king, the current king there, but that he was the son of King Bimbisara, and he actually murdered his father so that he could gain the throne. And he goes and he asks the Buddha some questions, and that sutta basically stays mundane. It does not go off into the super mundane. And you could imagine why that would be true. So in most cases, starting off in the mundane and then bringing it to the supramundane would be the correct way of teaching. And that in some cases, when there's like no possibility of getting anywhere in the noble, the Buddha will leave it as mundane. Does that answer your question, Ivan?
Yeah. I mean, yes, because I don't
That
know
it,
why I kind of find a lot of fascination when the Buddha talk about the mundane Dhamma, because it's just, actually, I don't know why. I guess because of that, I appreciate the super mundane more. I don't know.
all right. So one of the things that you can say then is that the mundane is a set of belief systems that people have, and the supramundane is based upon the Four Noble Truths. That in fact, Michael Mitchell, Michael just posted something. Can you read what the Buddha teaches and what he does not teach?
Sure, this is from Majjhima Nikaya 63. Remember what I have left undeclared as undeclared, and remember what I have declared as declared. And what have I left undeclared? The world is eternal, I have left undeclared. The world is not eternal, I have left undeclared. The world is finite, I have left undeclared. The world is infinite, I have left undeclared. The soul is the same as the body, I have left undeclared. The soul is one thing and the body another, I have left undeclared. After death, a Tathagata exists, I have left undeclared. After death, Tathagata does not exist, I have left undeclared. After death, Tathagata both exists and does not exist, I have left undeclared. After death, Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist, I have left undeclared. Why have I left that undeclared? Because it is unbeneficial, it does not belong to the fundamentals of the holy life, it does not lead to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. That is why I have left it undeclared. And what have I declared?
Okay, let's stop there for just a second. All right. What the Buddha is saying here is that all of the mundane stuff that people believe, he does not declare. Like, for instance, is the world eternal? And if you got any interest in astrophysics, that's one of the main issues that they have. What's going to happen in the future is basically what that question is. What is the world? Is it going to be permanent? It's going to be temporary? He didn't talk about it because it wasn't an issue of the day. But what about the human race? Is that going to outclass the planet Earth, or is the planet Earth going to go green again without the humans? The Buddha didn't declare that either. All right, so the important point, though, is about the Tathagata. Does the Tathagata exist after death or not? He's left that undeclared, and that goes along with what is the soul. Is it part of the body? Is it separate from the body? Is it both? Is it neither? What's going on there? All of that stuff, which we can consider magical thinking, the Buddha didn't declare any of that. And yet you will find monks all over, Western monks, Asian monks, all kinds of people will declare what happens to them and the other people after death. It's part of what you would, in fact, what I would refer to it as Buddhism. And I make this big distinction between the teachings of the Buddha, what he does declare, and what is a belief system that has grown up around the Buddha that includes a lot of stuff that he did not declare. So, Michael, go ahead and read the rest of it.
And what have I declared? This is suffering I have declared. Or we could say this is the satisfaction I have declared. This is the origin of dissatisfaction I have declared. This is the cessation of dissatisfaction I have declared. This is the way leading to the cessation of dissatisfaction I have declared. Why have I declared that? Because it is beneficial. It belongs to the fundamentals of the holy life. It leads to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. That is why I have declared it.
All right, so what does he declare? He declares the Four Noble Truths. And that's, in fact, what everything that the Buddha teaches. He also refers to that as dukkha, dukkha nirodha. Dukkha would be the first noble truth, that it exists. And then dukkha nirodha is that you can come to a place where dukkha does no longer exist for you. And that can be temporary. It can be in the moment. It, as a skill, can become lasting. And eventually, you can become free from it. So this is what the Buddha teaches. And that leads into the second part of the talk today. What's going on there is, though Nick couldn't make it to the call, he'll certainly be listening to it after we do the call. But he was at Wat Metta with Ajahn Thanissaro in Southern California, and that he posted about his trip there. He was there for about a week, And I would like now Mikey to read what Nick posted. And while he's posting that, I would invite you all to begin to formulate questions, because Nick is not here to answer the questions. We'll leave that as something for the group to answer the questions that are arising in this. So go ahead, Mikey, read what he has posted.
Hey friends, got back from a week at Meta.
Your mic is muted.
So he said, hey friends, got back from a week at Meta Forest Monastery. It's truly a beautiful place with lovely monks and long-term residents. I helped them with a bunch of projects around the Wat and assisted them with some solar knowledge as well. Also had a lot of time to sit and enjoy the breath. I was a little familiar with Ajahn Thanissaro before, but ended up reading quite a bit of his material while I was there and listened to a lot of his talks, both in person and recordings. As some of you are probably aware, he definitely has a more serious religious bent and somewhat of a strict dad delivery. He also talks about rebirth a lot, talking about bad karma, jumping lifetimes and such. He has this "you better get enlightened or else" message, which is a little overwhelming. That said, his meditation instruction, approaches to Dhamma concepts, and ways of unpacking how the mind works is some of the best and lucid out there. He's certainly a literary genius, no doubt. Curious to hear anyone's thoughts who are familiar with him.
All right. So the question is then, do you, based upon what the Buddha declared and not declared, what do you think about what Ajahn Thanissaro, based upon Nick? What does Nick think? What did he write about Ajahn Thanissaro, about what he does declare? Santiago, does Ajahn Thanissaro declare rebirth?
I don't want to make a claim to things that I don't know.
Neither do I. That's why I'm asking you guys. Ben, do you want to take a stab at it?
I'd say that if someone is discussing something as fact that isn't knowable as fact, such as karma jumping lifetimes, then it's probably not correct.
Okay. Well, not only with the Buddha not declaring such stuff, here's a question for you, Santiago, and that is, what personal understanding, not understanding, but personal knowledge, witnesses, actual experience about future lives?
I think they're all anecdotal, like from the person themselves, I guess.
Okay, so you put it more in the realm of a belief.
Oh, I don't think that there is rebirth. I
All
think
right.
like you're born in this, like dying, like being born and dying is like maybe a concept for I'm being birthed back into samsara right now by doing unwholesome stuff, and then like dying by doing wholesome stuff is generally how I understand the matter. But
All
as
right.
to ultimately whether that is the case, I have no idea. But yeah.
All right. Well, that's a good answer, that you don't have any idea, but you do know that it's widespread that people do believe in it. That in fact it's the basic foundation of Hinduism, and Hinduism has had a major influence on Buddhism in the past so many centuries, to the point that it's become a major foundation in Buddhism. But that's not what the Buddha taught. Is that your understanding?
Yeah. I mean, from what I've learned here, of course.
All right. Well, one of the things that we do not declare here is things that we don't know. But that's in fact what you could say, that the Buddha only declared what he knew that was going to be wholesome, beneficial, and leads one to enlightenment. And yet here we have Tanisaro teaching something that's a little different than that. And yet he is talking about what he's teaching also leads to enlightenment. Now, I would go so far as to say that's quite possible, but unlikely. And here's where I'm coming from with that. That the Buddha is actually teaching a soft path, an easy path, a method of what you could call the carrot. And that making people afraid about the future in order to get them to practice now would be more like a stick. That perhaps you've heard about Christianity, that now many, especially in the psychological world, are claiming that teaching children about hell in Christianity is child abuse, making the children afraid of something that possibly doesn't exist. And so this is a method of teaching. It would be the stick or the carrot. This would be the hard method and the soft method. And the Buddha has been known to use both, the stick and the carrot, except that most places he winds up using the carrot, in the sense that if you practice the Eightfold and Noble Path, you will get benefits immediately. You can see that very clearly in the Anapanasati Sutta about gladdening the mind. Gladdening the mind is actually kind of a carrot. It gains you some value immediately as soon as you start doing it. However, if you're following the hard path, then the hard path would be that you feel that you've got to practice. But what are you practicing? If the practice itself is based upon fear, that in fact one of the ways of looking at it is that this life is precious. You should practice now, because who knows, you may not have a precious life again. You may be reborn as an animal. You may be reborn in hell. And yet in Thailand, they have the practice of merit in the idea of, if I make merit, feed the monks, build a temple, be a good little boy, then I don't have to practice. That instead, I'll be reborn in a better life, so that then it's easier to practice. Well, if you know the Dhamma now, isn't this life good enough? Isn't this life easy enough to start practicing correctly now? And what about a future life where you've done all of this donation, you've done all of this merit making, and now you're in a future life? Won't you have the idea that, oh, well, let me make some more merit, let me make more good deeds, so that the life after this one will be good enough to actually practice? And the fact is that we don't know. The Buddha's teaching is for this very life, this moment. Now is the time to practice, and that the best part of it is that we get benefit for our correct practice right here, right now. We get that carrot right now. We don't have to try to avoid the stick. Now, one of the ways of looking at it is No doubt you've heard about Mahayana, and perhaps you've heard the word Hinayana. Does anybody know what the word Hinayana means? Ben, do you know Hinayana? You ever heard that word? How about you, Mikey? We used it yesterday. Okay, that the Mahayana is the word yana is like a big vessel, a big boat. And the Mahayana means that everybody can get on this boat and sail off into Nibbana, sail off into enlightenment all together. And that the Hinayana means the small boat. And Theravada is accused of being Hinayana, to where Tibetan Buddhism is considered Mahayana. Now, here's the point. If you are practicing Mahayana, that means that you get on the boat and you normally think of yourself as a passenger, not the crew. That's the same thing as going to a psychologist and paying the psychologist money so that you can feel better, because it's the job of the psychologist to make you feel better. It's sort of like a quid pro quo or a business deal. If you scratch the psychologist with money, and he's going to scratch you and make you feel better. And so within the Mahayana, the problem is that everybody wants to be a passenger and nobody's wanting to be the crew. And if you are on the boat waiting for it to leave the dock, guess what? It never leaves the dock. Everybody's sitting there as a passenger waiting for it to leave. And when you get the idea that, wait a minute, this Mahayana boat that I have spent all of these months and weeks standing in line to get on the boat, and now the boat is full and it still doesn't leave. Maybe it would be better if I got a canoe. And this is the idea then of the Hinayana, is everybody is responsible for themselves. Ultimately, even those who are in a Mahayana system still have to get their own boat. They have to row their own boat. Now, if you can think then of the boat dock, and the idea comes maybe from the abbot of, oh, little monk, why don't you get in the boat and paddle and row your way out into the lake where you can find some peace and quiet in the middle of the lake? And so that's the teaching of the Buddha, is inviting people to go on their own journey, to go find your own, to do your own paddling, to do your own right noble effort to make some progress. Now let's take that from the other direction. There you are on the dock, and the drill instructor says, get in that boat. You'd better get in that boat or I'm going to beat your ass. And so everybody hops onto their individual boat, and they're not told that the boat in this set is still tied to the dock. So they can row and row and row and row and not get anywhere because they haven't untethered the boat from the dock. So in that regard, what is the tether? The tether here is fear. If you are rowing that boat because you're afraid, you're not going to get very far. But if you can row the boat not from the stick, but from the carrot of, yes, you've got someplace to go, let's actually do that. Now, the third possibility is that, oh, I'm just going to sit here on the dock. I'm not going to go rowing. I'm going to stay here. And this is what, let us say, 99% of all of the people are doing is that they're not practicing. They don't even know that they could go rowing, which would be called a spiritual journey. Now, the question is, an interesting question is, when you're out there rowing your boat, how far into the lake can you row? Does anybody have a clue about that? Santiago, how far into the lake can you row?
Till you get tired, till you give up.
All right, that's one possibility. But one of the things is, suppose you don't get tired and you keep rowing, you keep rowing, you keep rowing, that you've gotten your tether off, but you're still doing it from fear. And so you're rowing and you're rowing and you're rowing. How far can you get into the lake?
Probably not as much as you could if you were taking it
Okay,
without being
the
fearful,
answer
I
that
guess.
I'm looking for is halfway. You can get halfway into the lake, the middle of the lake. And if you go any further than that, then you're just going to some other place off the lake. You also heard that about the forest. How far into the forest can you go? You can only go halfway. Because if you go any further than that, you're going out of the forest. All right? So, now that we've got that, I would like to tell you a little story about the pilgrim. There was a book written in the Middle Ages, I think by Dante, and the name of the book was Pilgrim's Progress. How many of you ever heard of such a book about Pilgrim's Progress? What is a pilgrim? Samantha, what's a pilgrim?
One that sets out to find something new.
Isn't the pilgrim actually the guy in the canoe then rowing his canoe? The pilgrim actually in the Middle Ages were people who were going from Europe to the Middle East, going there on a pilgrimage to find a holy site. And once they got to the holy site, what did they do? They maybe rested for a day or two, and then they got up, still stayed a pilgrim, and go to another holy site. And so they remain a pilgrim. They continue on a journey. The question is, when is the journey ever finished? The answer is when you get halfway. That's the time to stop rowing. But the stopping halfway into the lake is not the same as staying on the shore, staying on the pier. That you actually have to paddle. You have to take the right noble effort to clean out the mind. But many people continue to think that there's no end to the journey, that I have to keep rowing, that I'll never get to enlightenment. Let me keep struggling. Let me keep trying. And they never come to the point of recognizing that where they are right now is good enough. So this is the real teaching of the Buddha, is kind of like a two-step process, with the Mahayana being a three-step process. What's the difference? The difference is in the Mahayana, you've got to get on the big boat and go nowhere for a long time before you figure out that the big boat's not going to take you anywhere. You're just a passenger, that you've got to do your own work. You've got to do your own rowing. And then we start doing the rowing. We got to leave the pier and go out to the middle of the lake. And then we need, once we get there, to stop rowing. Just as the pilgrim, once he gets to the holy place, it's time to stop. Stop being a pilgrim and be, let us say, a resident of paradise. To stay in the holy place. Now, if you have thoughts that are wholesome, that if they are happy thoughts where you feel no fear at all, you're free from fear, you feel safe, secure, comfortable, relaxed, and satisfied, isn't that a holy enough place? Is that not the holy place? So in fact, in our method of working, that means that you can go to the middle of the lake, you can get to that holy place very quickly. We just don't stay there. We just don't stay because of the habit patterns of the mind. So we have to keep making that little short journey. But every time that we make that short journey from the unwholesome to the holy, to the wholesome state, it becomes easier because we've been developing the skills to do that. And so we go over and over and over again back to the holy place and learn to sustain that holy place, to be able to stay there longer periods of time. And this is actually then the practice of applying the right noble effort to have wholesome, noble thoughts, to gladden the mind, to change our attitude from being an attitude of a victim, being yelled at by the drill sergeant on the shore. Then we become a paddler, and we paddle out with those wholesome thoughts, and then we stop paddling and just enjoy the show. And so it's not a one-step process. In fact, I've described it as 3 steps. The first step is, who's going to do it for me? When we figure out nobody's going to do it for you, the Mahayana doesn't work. The boat never leaves the shore because everybody wants to be a passenger. And so you've got to do your own rowing. You've got to do your own work. That means that you run into the issue of the doubt about, am I capable of rowing out to the middle of the lake? Well, the answer to that is get in the canoe and start paddling and find out whether you can make it or not. And if we keep doing that over and over and over again, we'll gain the skill of paddling a canoe. Now, what is the skill of paddling a canoe in the reference to the Noble Dhamma? Is that you can, in fact, change your mind from an unwholesome state into a wholesome state. You can change, in fact, the state of mind from being a victim stuck on the shore into being one capable of rowing your boat to the middle of the lake, so that you can find some peace and quiet. You can find some solitude there. And so this is the multi-step process. You could say then that the gladdening in the mind, bringing up the happiness, bringing up the first jhana, is actually the effort that it takes of doing the rowing. And then once we've completed that rowing, we can stop rowing because we have the skills now that are needed to get us to the middle of the lake where we can relax. So, Santiago, what do you think about this?
I think it's good enough. More than good enough. It's what I
Yeah.
want to hear. No
Yes.
mucking around a bunch of places.
So, this is actually the real practice, is that you've got to do it yourself for a while, and then you've got to give up on the striving and let yourself be okay the way that you are. Warts and all. You're good enough already. Because if you have that, then when the warts come up, you can say, I see you, Mr. Wart. Then we can hit that wart with the paddle, I guess, and just come back to being in a state of peace and quiet and everything is okay. And yet, if we have that attitude of, oh, things are going to get really, really bad. If I don't practice, things are going to get really bad. If we have that attitude, then that brings fear in, and that keeps us from being able to enjoy the state that we're already in. But in fact, that's the possible reason why it doesn't last, that we don't stay in that state of first jhana. But in fact, what happens is fear comes back up. Is this good enough? Have I gone far enough? Is this holy place that I am now, is it a good enough holy place to stay, or should I go off to another site? This is the doubt. And when we come to the conclusion that, oh no, the middle path, the teaching of the Buddha, is to come to bring the mind into a noble state and sustain it and keep it there. Last week or two, one of the students asked, yeah, I can get my mind into a really nice state. And then the question comes up of, well, is that all there is? Yes. And we can ask that question, is that all there is, from two different perspectives. We can say the question, is that all there is? And the answer is, yippee, yeah, this is good enough. Or we can say from an unhappy place, no, this is not good enough. The show must go on. We have to keep working and paddling. And that that kind of sinks our boat. So, is that all there is, or is this all there is to it? The answer to that is yes, this is all there is. Or another way of talking about it, the Buddha has the word is sunyata or sunyata, and what that means is that everything is ultimately empty. So when you come to a happy state, let that be enough. Let it be empty. There's nothing really to it. Can you stay in that state of everything is okay, not a problem in the world? Or do we have to start questioning, is that all there is to enlightenment? Because when we ask that question, we've just come out of that happy state into wanting more. And so we can practice over and over and over again to row the boat out to the middle of the lake and be happy and satisfied there for the long term. This is what we mean by sustaining. So, Ivan, do you have a question about this? You have any remarks?
Yeah, just one question is, I don't know why some people talk about wanting to investigate the root of dukkha. Basically, there's this like, the job has not been done yet. I guess that some people are like that because, yeah, I don't know.
Well,
because yeah, they want the cessation of. But actually, you know what? I'm confused, to be honest. I don't understand. But I mean, I understand my own practice. I'm confident. Yeah.
All right. Here's one way to look at it is that you may never understand those people. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, it's okay that we don't understand. We don't understand why the 99% are stuck on the pier. We don't understand why the 99% don't even bother to get on the Mahayana boat. They're just stuck in their reality without actually recognizing that there's a spiritual journey to take. They don't get it. They would rather be interested in politics and interested in making money and all of that. And it's almost incomprehensible that people would leave their lives like that. Well, if it's incomprehensible, then let's just be there. Okay, I don't understand why so many people are stuck in their misery. But they are. The question is, when will they start asking questions about it? That in fact, if someone believes in magical thinking, Christians believe in the Christian story about a dude with a long beard in heaven riding a magical chair made out of ivory. He's got a trident. I know that that's the description of the Zeus, the Greek god, but that was what Christianity was in the beginning. Now, the big dude in the sky has lost his trident, he's lost his chair, but he's still up there watching. And who is he watching? He's watching you to make sure that if you screw up, he's going to write that down. He's making a list and checking it every day, not just twice. He already knows who's naughty and nice, and everybody believes that they're on the naughty list. And Christianity further has dead man walking and no sex babies and all kinds of things that they believe that don't really bring you to a state of satisfaction. Now, it would be possible, they do have the concept that Jesus saves, which means then that if you just turn everything over to Jesus and just sit and relax and be happy, well, how many Christians are actually able to do that? They don't, because it's not a practice for them. And so they don't practice being happy. They practice believing that Jesus will do it for them, but they never do it themselves. So it's a great big belief system. And the thing that's very interesting about it is that people, when you know something, you generally don't argue with those who know something else that's actually false. It's a belief. So there's two things. One is actual knowledge based upon repeated investigation, repeated skill development, and then there is knowledge that's just merely a belief system. Now, the funny part about it is that those who hold beliefs hold to them much tighter and stronger than people who have direct knowledge. People who have direct knowledge, they'll just say, okay, I hear what you're saying, and walk off happily. But people who believe in Christianity, there's also a whole lot of people who believe in rebirth and reincarnation, and there is absolutely no way that you're going to convince them otherwise, because they hold to beliefs much more tenaciously than they will hold to real wisdom, real truth. Then, in fact, real wisdom knows that if you hold to truth and hold to wisdom very tightly, it's going to be like butter or cheese. It's going to squeeze right through your fingers. And yet this is what belief systems do. They want to hold it tightly because they think that the belief system is going to be of value for them rather than their own mental training. And so, Mikey, you asked a question yesterday about this. Do you remember the question that you asked?
How to talk with people that have magical beliefs. How to treat them.
How to handle them, right?
Yeah.
Okay. When he brought that question up, my first response was that there was a musical back in late 1950s called Camelot, and that Kennedy's family was really into that musical play. But in that play, there was a song, and the song was, "How do you handle a woman?" Now, there's an answer to that. How do you handle a woman? You love her. That's the answer to that in that song. That's how you handle a woman. You don't argue with her. You don't piss her off. You don't try to convert her. You don't tell her that she's wrong when she's wrong. You love her. Now, that goes in both ways, by the way. I'm not picking on women in general, but how do you handle ignorant people? The answer is that you love them as they are, warts and all, even if they're nothing but a great big wart of belief systems walking around, we could still love them, as opposed to trying to convince them that they're wrong. Now, one of the things that I find amusing and actually quite marvelous is almost everyone, not everyone, but almost everyone who calls me has listened to a video or two, and they're actually ready for the Dhamma. Very rarely do I ever get someone who calls because they want to argue. I find that quite amazing. In fact, in the old days, and it may have been my own attitude back when I was in North Carolina, the Christians would come and they want to argue. They want to make their position correct. And how do you handle those, Mikey? You be polite and kind to them. You don't try to change their mind. You only teach the Dhamma to those people who are asking for it. So, let's see. Michael Swift, what do you think?
Yes, I think that's good.
All right. So, Anna, what do you think?
I like the lake metaphor a lot. Yes. Thank
You
you,
like that
Dhammarato.
lake metaphor? Okay, good.
Yeah.
So, how about you, Samantha? What do you think?
No problems here.
All right. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and finish this call then. Does anybody have any last remarks before we finish? All right. Let's do just a little review. There is the hard method where you are put into a state of fear you've got to practice. And then there is the soft method, which you can go and practice because you're gaining benefit from it immediately. And then there is the issue of the pilgrim. When do you stop practicing? The answer is when do you stop a journey is when you've arrived. So don't just stay on a journey. Actually enjoy the fact that you can put your mind into a good state and keep it there. That's the holy place. The holy place is when the mind is whole. All right. So, yes, go ahead, Michael.
There's no journey. We're already there.
Actually, that's correct. There's really no journey to make, except that there are some skills that need to be developed. And what are those skills? Gladdening the mind, thus one trains oneself. Getting into a state of sukha, which has the quality of being safe, secure, comfortable, and satisfied. Thus one trains oneself. To be in a state of happiness and joy. Thus one trains oneself. To have the body that's relaxed rather than uptight and full of fear. Thus one trains oneself. So this is actually a training. One must train, and the training then basically is to point out that you're already okay. You're already all right. We've just been convinced otherwise. We've been told, oh, there's hell to pay. And so we're out there being afraid that we've got to pay a debt. When in fact, nobody owes you anything, and you don't owe anybody anything. You don't have to teach anybody anything. You can just sit down and relax. So develop those skills. That's the rowing. You got to row out to that place where you're in deep satisfaction. And in fact, I misused the word deep. It's not deep satisfaction, it's just satisfaction. When you're really satisfied, this is it. Put down the oars and let the boat drift for a while. Everything is fine. So, does anybody else have anything to say? Mikey, why don't you take it from here?
Yes, enjoyed this light Dhamma talk. Thank you, friends, for being here today. Go ahead and spend some time on opensanghafoundation.org. Sign up for a profile, add your profile picture, add a bio. Also, some people have been adding some new facilities, so thank you for that. If you'd like to add some watts near you, that would be much appreciated. We've got quite a filled out map now with many facilities all over the world. And go ahead and check out transcriptions too. We've been doing more and more of transcriptions of Dhammaratos and other people in our Sangha's talks, so you can check those out.
Yes, we also have a bunch of podcasts.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. I'm glad to see so many smiles. May you all be happy. May you all remember that happiness is just a smile away.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye.